Have you ever paused to consider what unfolds in the unseen realm when you kneel in prayer, while the world rushes headlong into Christmas celebrations? Saint Teresa of Jesus understood that this night carries a depth few recognize. She taught that Christmas does not begin in noise or activity, but in silence, the silence that watches, waits, and makes room for God. For Teresa, God does not reveal himself amid distraction, but within the attentive heart. Christmas Eve is not merely the eve of a feast. It is a sacred threshold, where eternity touches time and heaven inclines toward earth. She did not speak of dazzling visions on this night. Instead, she revealed something far deeper. What happens when the soul chooses prayer while the world chooses busyness? She described Christmas Eve as a night of intimacy, like a lover waiting in quiet fidelity for the beloved. To watch, she taught, is to love. And when a soul prays on this night, while others are absorbed in external preparations, heaven recognizes that interior choice. Prayer on Christmas Eve is not withdrawal from the world, but participation in heaven's own movement toward the Incarnation. Saint Teresa believed that prayer sends ripples through the spiritual realm far beyond what the mind can perceive. The soul that watches does not stand alone. It stands with heaven itself. In prayer, the manger of Bethlehem becomes united with the throne of God, and the mystery of the Incarnation becomes present again, not as memory, but as living reality. Teresa spent her life exploring what she called the interior castle, the dwelling places within the soul where God resides. She discovered that God watches every movement of the heart with tender attention. Every sincere prayer matters, especially on this night. When you pray on Christmas Eve, heaven responds. The angels and saints recognize the soul that chooses vigilance. Teresa insisted throughout her writings that watchfulness is the most fundamental act of love. This recognition is not distant or impersonal. God inclines himself with special tenderness toward the soul that waits for him. Your prayer becomes an act of fidelity, a loving answer to God's own long waiting for humanity. God has been waiting for you far longer than you have waited for him. Every moment of your life has unfolded under his patient gaze. When you pray on this night, you echo back to heaven that divine waiting. You become like the shepherds, simple, attentive, awake when grace arrives. Teresa also taught something that may seem surprising, that the soul can console God. In his mysterious love, God allows himself to be touched by our response. When the world is distracted, the soul that turns toward prayer offers heaven something precious: presence instead of absence, love instead of indifference. Christmas is not only remembrance of a birth long past. It is entrance into the eternal present of God, where the Incarnation is always unfolding. When you pray on Christmas Eve, you stand with Mary and Joseph, with the shepherds and angels, with all the saints who have watched and waited through the ages. Your prayer is woven into salvation history. It is not small. It is not unnoticed. Saint Teresa taught that the true nativity scene is not made of wood or stone, but of the human soul. The heart is the manger. The interior castle is the dwelling prepared for Christ. Prayer cleanses this dwelling, opens its doors, and makes space for the divine guest to be born within. Christ does not wish only to be remembered. He desires to dwell. He who chose the poverty of a stable continues to choose the poverty of the human heart. Your heart, imperfect, distracted, wounded, is precisely where he longs to be born. When you pray on Christmas Eve, angels rejoice. Teresa held a deep devotion to the angels and understood their role in salvation history. On this night, your prayer joins their eternal praise. Heaven recognizes when earth responds. Something else happens quietly. Grace is poured out. Not spectacular grace, but interior grace, illumination, healing, conversion, peace. Teresa taught that these hidden graces are more powerful than visible wonders. They reshape the soul from within and bear fruit long after the prayer has ended. Prayer on this night also becomes intercession. It expands beyond you. It carries others into God's presence, the forgotten, the suffering, the distant, the lost. This is the communion of saints at work. One soul praying and the whole church breathing with it. And finally, heaven gives peace. Not the peace of comfort or ease, but the peace that comes from union with God. A peace that remains even in hardship. A peace that Mary carried into the stable. A peace that Teresa discovered only after years of struggle. This is what happens when you pray on Christmas Eve. Heaven watches. God listens. Grace moves. Christ finds room. The choice is yours. You may allow the night to pass in noise and distraction, or you may watch with love. God will not force himself upon you, but he waits to be invited. Heaven is ready. This night is rich with grace. Do not let it pass unattended.